Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to week 2 of Enough. Yeah, where I've had enough of the messing around up here. No, I'm just kidding. All right, real quick, I want to start with a little game, little opener. Not really a game, but more like a poll, okay? So we're going to do the fingers down game. So fingers up, put a finger down if what I say applies to you, okay? Right? Put your finger down if you've met someone famous before. I'll let you determine whether you think the person is famous or not. Okay? Never watched Stranger Things. If you've ever pulled an all-nighter. If you have your own room. If you would like your own room. If you received a bad grade on a test. How about if you had a crush on a friend, but they didn't feel the same way? Okay? How about you want to go to college, but are concerned on how to pay for it? Maybe you went somewhere you know that you should not have been. Canceled plans because you didn't feel like going the last minute. You needed money for something, or more money for something than you had. If you've ever lacked confidence. If you've ever needed more patience. Anybody still have fingers up? Okay. Some of you have a very mild life, and that's okay. Many of us experience lots of different things. Some of you have had the honor and privilege of experiencing some of those things, and some of you have had the misfortune of having to experience some of those things, right? But life is full of different experiences we have. Some of them are good, some of them not so good, right? But when things aren't good, we're left wondering who is going to support us when the experiences don't turn our way, right? When we feel like we're out on a limb. If you've ever been somewhere and you've been out of money and you need money, who's going to bail us out, right? That's a legit question. So in experiences, when we feel like there's not enough to go around, how do we get out of that? How do you feel in the midst of that? It doesn't feel great. And so we need to have a support system. Like I remember when I was growing up, I was in high school. My dad was between jobs and money was scarce, right? There's times where by that point in time, I hadn't really kept growing to the point where my shoes had gotten too small and I needed new shoes, and I just kept forgetting to tell my mom. But I did get to the point where, like, hey, basketball season is coming around. Shoes are not cheap, right? And I needed this year's shoes, right? There were times where I had, summer camp. How many of you guys went to camp this week? Yeah. Like, there were times, like, when I was in high school, I was like, I don't know if my family can afford it. And I luckily had a job, so I just kind of paid for it myself, and I didn't want to bother my parents about it, right? There are times in life where, especially in that season of high school, I didn't always know when my needs were going to be met. And I had great loving parents who always, I never felt like I went where I didn't have everything I needed, but there were times where I wondered how my needs were going to be met. And if you've been there, you know what that's like. Maybe you can relate to that. Maybe you can't. Maybe you just haven't had that life lesson yet. But there's always going to be a time in all of our lives where we have to wonder, when are our needs going to be met, and how is God going to meet those needs, right? Sometimes it feels like we just don't have enough to get by. And I want you to recognize that when we believe, or we want to believe, that God will provide, but sometimes our experiences cause us to doubt whether he will or how he will, that can be a scary place to be. How is God going to provide for what I know I need next? For some of you, it might be financial. For others of you, it might be, God, when are you going to provide me some good friends? Because I feel like I don't have any. For some of you, it might be, when is God going to provide me something that I can do to take my mind off the depression or the anxiety? For others of you, I don't know what it is, but we all go through things from time to time where we wonder, God, are you there? And are you going to provide? And if so, how? Can you please clue me in? And it's a testing of our faith, right? Whenever we go through hard times, it's a testing of our faith. But I want us to check out Psalm chapter 4. This is coming from David. And it was a time where he was filled with questions, wondering, how God was going to provide. And this is what it says. David says, "Answer me when I call you, my righteous God. Give me relief from my distress. Have mercy on me and hear my prayer." Any of you guys relate to that? And then he turns and he says, "How long will you people turn my glory into shame? How long will you love delusions and seek false gods? Know that the Lord has set apart his faithful servant for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him. Tremble and do not sin. When you are on your beds, search your hearts and be silent. Offer sacrifices of the righteous and trust in the Lord. Many, Lord, are asking, who will bring us prosperity? Let the light of your face shine on us. Fill my heart with joy when their grain. Fill my heart with joy when their grain and new wine abound. In peace I will lie down and sleep. For you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety." So I love this because I love the Psalms in general because they are cries out from real people experiencing real life problems. And sometimes they're like psalms of thanksgiving. Sometimes they're psalms of grief. Sometimes they're psalms of anger. Like, God, smite my enemies, right? Sometimes they're psalms of just honesty, just crying out to God. And I love this because what David is saying is like, hey, when are you going to hear my prayer? When are you going to, step in and provide? If you don't know the story of David's life, you can read a lot about it in 2 Samuel. But you see that David goes a long period of time where, he's on the run because the current king, Saul, wanted to kill him. There's times where he's betrayed. He's abandoned. His brothers don't think highly of him. In fact, his father didn't even really consider him a son and just put him out in the field to deal with the sheep. Right? David had gone through a lot. He knows what it means to not have very much, and yet he still cries to God, "Where are you? Are you going to provide? Do you hear my prayer?" And I love the psalm just for their honesty, because he's saying the prayers that you and I often pray in our moments of despair. When we feel like just filled up with doubt. God, where are you? David voices that. And so we can read the Psalms and know that whatever we're going through, it's not anything that that somebody's never gone through before. Whatever we go through, there have been people before us who've gone through it and survived and still give praise to God despite the circumstances. And so I love the Psalms for that. But David, he modeled what it looks like to put a situation in God's hands and just trust him with the outcome. Because we don't always know how God's going to do something. But God promises he will provide for our needs. Right? The challenging situation might still persist, but God promises he's going to be with us throughout all of it. Which I love. So let's do that little poll again, but this time questions will be a little bit different, all right? So put your fingers up and put one down if you've laid awake at night worrying about family or school or friends. If you felt like life wasn't going the way you'd like it to go. If you had a friend that you once were close to but are not close to anymore. If you wonder if a friendship will ever go back to the way it used to be. If you've had a time when your relationship with God wasn't as strong as you wanted. If you thought that a choice you made would derail your future. If you felt let down by a parent, a church leader, a coach, a teacher, or other caregiver. If you've ever felt let down by any of those things or put a finger down on any of these, then you understand that these are all things that David himself also experienced. Right? You can put your fingers down. This is crazy because the same stuff that you and I still struggle with today, it may look different in our modern cultural context, but they're still at the root the same issues that humans have dealt with since the beginning of time. Right? And David gives a voice to this, but he also provides hope. And he shows what it means to trust in God no matter what. That, to me, is a comfort when I read the Psalms. But then John, the disciple who is maybe one of the closest to Jesus, he puts it in another light. He actually was the only disciple that stuck by Jesus when he was crucified. Do you know when they arrested Jesus, it says the disciples scattered and they hid? Right? Then you know that Peter denied knowing Jesus because he was afraid. All the disciples scattered and hid or denied Jesus, except for John. John was the only one present when Jesus was crucified. In fact, one of Jesus' last words was, "John, take care of my mother." right? Because Jesus was leaving. So we know John was there. But this is what he says. And can you imagine, after following somebody around for 3.5 years, seeing them perform miracles, knowing that they were who they said they were, that they were the Son of the living God, and they were the chosen one, the prophesied Messiah, and then you watch him die hanging on a tree? You'd be like, what was all that for? I thought you were God. Like, your whole mind has to shift, and you're like, what's going on? But John, he obviously, hindsight is 20/20. He sees what happens. Jesus raises from the dead. It all becomes great. And then they go on to lead the church. And John's writing letters. And near the end of his life, he writes 1 John. And it's one of his first letters. And this is what it says in 1 John chapter 3. He says, see what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called what? Children of God. Right? And that is what we are. The reason the world does not know us is that it did not know him. Talking about Jesus. So John calls us the children of God, right? Families don't always feel loving or perfect because they're full of humans who love imperfectly, right? But God calls us his children and shows us ideal love in every season. In fact, what love is supposed to look like, God models for us. He modeled through Jesus, and we have his Spirit living and dwelling inside of us if we choose to give our lives to him. So we know we're not alone when it comes to God. We're not alone because of people, because he gave us the church. And he promises that he's not necessarily going to take away the storms in our life, but that he will be with us in the midst of them. The same truths that even David echoed all those thousands of years earlier, right? Which is kind of crazy. And again, at one point, John thought all was lost because he was there watching Jesus die on a tree. But he remained faithful, and he was able to see what perfect love actually looks like. Right? How many of you guys have played the board game Life? Right? In Life, the game, right? The players and their families encounter unexpected events that can throw a kink in your plans to win, right? Your plans go out the window. Suddenly they feel like maybe the game is out of your reach, right? And in real life, it's never a good feeling when our plans get derailed and we don't know how we're going to come back, how we're going to catch up, how we're going to survive, right? Maybe friendships you've invested or maybe they're not life-giving anymore. Maybe your family struggles with different things relationally or with finances or whatever it is. Maybe you feel emotionally depleted, right? None of that is pleasant in the game of real life, right? And in real life, spending doubles doesn't send you to the millionaire estates. So how do you deal with that in real life when it throws you curves, right? What I want you to remember this morning, the point of today's message is this, that when there isn't enough, God still provides. When there isn't enough, God provides. Simple truth that's really easy to forget in the midst of tough circumstances. But when it feels like there isn't enough, God always provides, right? And three things I would encourage you to do or to think about when it comes to this situation is, one, when we feel insecure, ask for peace, right? When we don't know what's ahead, we don't know how God is going to provide or when he's going to provide, that can make you feel insecure. But I want you to ask for peace, knowing, God, I don't know how this is all going to work out, but give me peace knowing that you care for the sparrows. You'll take care of me. So when you feel insecure, ask for peace. Secondly, when resources are scarce, ask God for hope. Just like David, remembering he called out and trusted that I know there will be a time where I don't have to worry about this. And maybe you need that reminder. So when resources are scarce, whether they're financial or otherwise, ask God for hope. To be able to fix your eyes on what is coming down the pike. That there is hope for the future despite what right now looks like. And lastly, when faced with doubt, ask for courage, right? Faith is not certainty. Therefore, doubt will accompany faith. And so when you experience that doubt, ask for courage in the midst of it. Don't shrink away because of your doubts, but rather lean into them with courage, right? Remember that when there isn't enough, God always provides. And oftentimes he uses those times of not having enough as perfect opportunities to be able to draw near to him and grow in a way that we wouldn't have otherwise. And sometimes that is a gift in and of itself, even though it doesn't feel like it at the time. So, when there's enough, God provides. Let me pray. You guys will finish this discussion in your small groups.